Hello and welcome to the companion video for the real world industry analysis by Stranti for the Cruisecalm MCS sitting in August 2019. So just a quick disclaimer in regards to this video. It is not meant as a replacement for the document. You will not get everything you want from the document from this video. It is simply to guide you through as almost an overview mid-level analysis without the in-depth aspects that some of the industry analysis stuff has in it. So with that said, let's move on straight away and take a look at our first section. And this is essentially about why we have this analysis. And the key thing is that an awareness of the industry and the sort of where the business is at in regards to the industry landscape will help you think about how the wider issues around the topic that get asked in the exam will relate to your decisions that you're going to have to talk about. So having that extra added knowledge makes a key difference to how we do in the exam. Essentially, the examiners have explicitly said that knowing about the industry will help you. And that's why we do it. We're only here to help people pass their exams. So the first thing we need to think about is that our role is in management accounting, and we report to our senior financial manager who reports directly to the finance director. Now, the key thing here is that this is quite a standard setup. In the previous sitting, we had a role where there was no senior financial manager. We reported directly to the finance director, and that had a few more strategic elements to it. This one is very standardized, the very basic structure of finance manager, senior financial manager, and then finance director. So we're in very, very comfortable space in regards to monitoring the implementation of our strategy. So with that said, let's crack on with the actual history of the holiday cruise industry. And the first and foremost thing we have to think about is what actually is a holiday cruise. Well, in case you weren't familiar, it's where you board a large vessel that's quite luxurious, very comfortable in terms of how it treats the customers. It's kind of like a floating hotel is a decent way to describe it. And they typically take you to different locations, and there's lots of different prices, and for the dining, for the the trip, how many destinations, for how long, etc. And it comes under the big tourist industry. The global tourism industry is huge. Flying, ferries, cruises, all that stuff comes with tourism. And this is a key segment. It's actually the highest growth tourism market at the moment. But how do we get there? Well, it begins with the first steam cruises in the 1800s, and then we move forwards through to a period in the mid-19th century, where passengers become a priority in terms of comfort, health and safety. It's still not quite luxurious at this point, but it develops over time. And by the early 20th century, we have the concept of a superliner, which is what you would link to the modern day cruise ship, where these are massive, they're ornate, and like I said, they are similar to floating hotels. And that's essentially where we're at today. We've got the modern cruise ship from the 1960s in terms of visually. It's got the up-to-date sort of engines compared to before, and it looks like a floating hotel. Like you can just see in the picture all the windows, very similar to a hotel. So this process, went through a lot of different stages. It's mostly been quite a slow-growing tourism industry. It's not been, at the forefront of tourist growth, but in recent years we see a massive increase, and this is because of how much more recent generations value experience over material wealth. It's well documented, as we'll see later on, that younger passengers are more and more likely to travel rather than, say, take out a mortgage. And this has translated in particular to a high growth in the cruise industry, in part due to social media and taking pictures in several locations across 2 weeks. It's a very popular thing to do. So with that said, what kind of cruises are there? We have seen a bit of that in the pre-scene, if you've seen that already. If not, essentially they broke it down a slightly different way. But in terms of how it's broken down in many cases, there's mini cruises, which are for sort of short 2 to 5 days style cruises for people that might not know if they like being on a cruise ship. They can take it to places like the Norwegian fjords or to the Mediterranean, for example. There's also all-inclusive cruises where it's more of a 1 week to 14-day option, and food and drink is often included, and it goes to a few more locations. It's a bit more ambitious. This is for people who are aware that they like cruises, or like the idea of cruising at least. And then there are these sort of specialist cruises that we get, like the around the world cruise. These are typically spanning several continents, usually 2 to 3. Some literally do cruise around the whole world, and these take months. These are extremely expensive, often private sometimes, but also, just lots of wealthy, affluent people on the same cruise for a long period of time, often elderly as well, because of the fact that it's a few months of your time. So it's not easy in the sense of, take a few months off work. Usually they are close to retirement age with quite a healthy bank balance. So what does this mean, for the pre-scene? Having been founded in the late 19th century, Cruisecalm will have a long history of seeing passengers in a different way. If they'd been in the early part of the century when it was first a thing, then they would have had issues in regards to, thinking that passengers in a lesser way, just, using almost a glorified ferry. Whereas now, from the 1860s-ish onwards, passengers became a priority in terms of comfort and safety. So this will be embedded in the culture of Cruisecalm, and it's something we can maybe pull out in regards to E2. In terms of the divestment that happened with Cruisecalm in the 1970s and its listing, it suggests it has a long history as a focused cruise operator and will have a large amount of expertise in the market. So with this in mind, they may have a lot of experience in the management team of handling these bond cruises, managing projects, but also we have to consider that they do have this ongoing commitment to upgrading their fleet, so they are very much keeping ahead of the curve, very focused on their core activities. But it does beg the question that maybe they can diversify because they are very focused. There is no other elements to the business. In regards to types of cruise, Cruisecalm only offer ocean cruises at the moment, so they're very narrow. So linking into that diversification, they kind of need to. There are huge companies like Carnival in this industry that will literally gobble them up in terms of an acquisition. So we really need to grow at a good pace to be able to ensure we're not just eaten up by a big Goliath group company like Carnival. So with this in mind, they're missing out on mini cruises, river cruises, and lots of lots of these sort of short stay, cheaper options. And we know from the consumer trends that younger people with less income are seeking to take on cruises as a mode of travel because of Instagram and their values. They're valuing experience over monetary wealth. So with that in mind, it's a real key area for growth to diversify away from just ocean cruises. Based on the information in the pre-scene, river cruises might not be a very expensive way to expand and would offer the opportunity to cater to these less affluent customers that are coming into the market. So with that said, we really need to be aware that there's a key area of potential growth in diversification. So now we're on to the industry examples. There are 25 of these. I will not go through every single one because it would take an absolute decade. But essentially these are here just to demonstrate how you can weave in some real world issues into your exam to make yourself look like in theory you will know how it integrates, how it relates to the wider industry to demonstrate your understanding. So these are hypothetical paragraphs, so they might sound a little bit weird without any context, but ultimately it's just trying to show you how you weave it into an example paragraph. So we'll go over a couple here. Cruise lines give refunds after US ban. So here is an issue where politics can cause a significant harm to the business because we operate internationally. Even if we're stuck in, or not stuck rather, located in Norland at Cruisecalm, we are still going to be chartering international waters, and we'll encounter international problems. One of those problems is the US's ban on travel to Cuba. And essentially, because they're multinational in nature, cruise companies, it's important to assess the risks posed by other jurisdictions and political outcomes that damage business to a certain region. So for example, if we were to write that into a paragraph, we could say, as a worldwide operation, cruise companies can be influenced by many different political factors that can harm revenues. So we're explaining, and then, for example, this is our justification, President Trump recently banned voyages to Cuba, which has caused many cruise companies to refund passengers due to changed itinerary. Okay, so justified. And now we've got our relation point. For this reason, Cruisecalm must be aware of the political risks in appropriate states and plan accordingly. So this is where we can bring in more risk management aspects and discuss it further if necessary. But essentially we've got our justification, our explanation, and then how it relates to what we're talking about. Again, the how it relates bit will be more focused in your exam because you know what the question is.
Hello, it's me again. I just wanted to take a few minutes of your time to first extend my hope that you enjoyed the free sample that you've just viewed, but also to just sort of explain what else the strategy do to help you pass your exam really effectively, provided you found our sample particularly interesting and insightful, of course. So, of course, we have a study text for every module, ranging from P1 to F3, and the certificate level is also free on our website. So we have study texts throughout the CIMA course, every module you could hope to study. The certificate level are free, as I mentioned, and then the rest of them, ranging from P1 to F3, are all available to purchase. Alongside this, if you're not so much a study text kind of student and you prefer a visual way of learning, we have the course videos. We essentially break down the study text into bite-sized presentations with a walkthrough, and it's a very, very, very engaging way of explaining the course. Following this, we have the pre-scene analysis, where we break down each pre-scene sitting into a number of videos, going through the whole document, but also adding a top 10 recommendations for what will come up in the exam, and also a strategic analysis where we put all the models you'd find in E2, for example, to the pre-scene itself, whichever that may be at the time. Alongside this, we provide an industry analysis. This is a document and accompanying video which help you give that contextual information in your exam. So for example, if the pre-scene's on the oil industry, the industry analysis will break down the oil industry, the current topics, trends, issues, what the competitive market looks like, all those kind of aspects, all condensed into one so you can spend your time wisely in your study period. Following on from this, when you actually want to practice all this knowledge, we have mock exams for all of our materials. So StudyText has a generic mock exam based on the module, whereas the pre-scene analysis has mocks available to purchase that are based on that specific pre-scene, that are targeted to the key issues we believe will come up. And if you're not content with just doing those mock exams and practicing that way, we have a marking and feedback system where you can purchase the ability to send in your paper, have it marked by a CIMA qualified accountant, and get personalized feedback on whether you can improve X or Y area. And sort of finally, if you will, if you're feeling really underprepared and that exam is coming really, really soon, the masterclasses are offered by Astranti, and they're essentially a crash course in anything you could want for that topic. So if it's a masterclass on the pre-scene, it's going to give you absolutely everything that you could possibly need to know about the pre-scene in one rather really condensed sitting. Likewise, if it was the F3 masterclass, you would have all of F3 gone through in a very crash course style presentation and video link. You can also purchase it post-stream as opposed to viewing it live, all these kind of aspects. We are very, very confident that these materials will help you get the exam success that you want. So we have a pass guarantee. Provided you fill out a form which demonstrates that you have utilized our materials to a large extent, and actually taken the time to study them, and you have unfortunately failed, we will offer you the same materials again for the next sitting as a consolidatory offer to ensure that you can get back on the horse and get that exam grade that you want. With that said, thank you very much for watching the sample video. I hope you enjoyed it and it gives you a lot of confidence in Astranti and your CIMA future.